Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. Before we read, let's invoke the blessing of the Lord. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः ईश्वरा परमा कृष्णः सच्चिदानन्दविग्रह अनादिरादिर्गोविन्दः सर्वकारणकारणम् जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तविंदा हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So dear devotees, we have been reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We started first canto and we were at the introduction. We have been reading the life and percept of Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and where we left was when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Puri. So let's read next. At Puri, when he entered the temple of Jagannath, he became at once saturated with transcendental ecstasy and fell down on the floor of the temple unconscious. The custodians of the temple could not understand the transcendental feats of the Lord, but there was great learned Pandita named Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya who was present, and he could understand that Lord's losing of his consciousness upon entering the Jagannath temple was not an ordinary thing. Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who was the chief appointed Pandita in the court of the king of Orissa, Maharaj Prataparudra, was attracted by youthful luster of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and could understand that such a transcendental trance was only rarely exhibited and only then by topmost devotees who are already on transcendental plane in complete forgetfulness of material existence. Only a liberated soul could show such a transcendental feat, and the Bhattacharya, who was vastly learned, could understand this in the light of transcendental literature with which he was familiar. He therefore asked the custodians of temple not to disturb the unknown sannyasi. He asked them to take the Lord to his home so he could be further observed in his unconscious state. The Lord at once carried to the home of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who at that time had sufficient power of authority due to his being the Sabha Pandita or state dean of faculty in Sanskrit literature. The learned Pandita wanted to scrutinizingly test the transcendental feat of Lord Chaitanya, because often unscrupulous devotees imitate physical feats in order to flaunt transcendental achievement just to attract innocent public and take advantage of them. A learned scholar like Bhattacharya can detect such impostors, and when he finds them out, he at once rejects them. In case of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Bhattacharya tested all symptoms in the light of the Shastras. He tested as scientist, not as foolish sentimentalist. He observed the movement of the stomach, the beating of the heart, and the breathing of nostrils. He also felt the pulse of the Lord, saw that all his bodily activities were in complete suspension. When he put a small cotton swab before the nostril, he found that there was a slight breathing as the fine fibers of cotton moved slightly. Thus he came to know that Lord's unconscious trance was genuine, and he began to treat him in a prescribed fashion. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could only be treated in special way. He would respond only to the resounding of holy names of the Lord by his devotees. This special treatment was unknown to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya because the Lord was still unknown to him. When the Bhattacharya saw him for the first time in the temple, he simply took him to be one of the many pilgrims. In the meantime, the companions of the Lord who reached the temple a little after him heard of the Lord's transcendental feats and he of his being carried away by Bhattacharya. The pilgrims at the temple was still gossiping about the incident, but by chance one of these pilgrims had met Gopinath Acharya, who was unknown to who was known to Gadadhar Pandit, and from him it was learned it was learned that the Lord was lying in unconscious state at the residence of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who happened to be brother-in-law of Gopinath Acharya. All the members of the party were introduced by Gadadhar Pandita to Gopinath Acharya, who took them all the house of Bhattacharya, who took them all to the house of Bhattacharya, where the Lord was lying unconscious in a spiritual trance. All the members then chanted loudly the holy name of the Lord Hari as usual, and Lord regained his consciousness. After this, Bhattacharya received all the members of the party, including Lord Nityanand Prabhu, and asked them to become his guest of honor. The party, including the Lord, went for a bathe in the sea, and Bhattacharya arranged for their residence and meals at the house of Kashi Mishra. Gopinath Acharya, his brother-in-law, also assisted. There were some friendly talks about the Lord's divinity between two brother-in-law, and in this argument, Gopinath Acharya, who knew the Lord before, now tried to establish the Lord as the personality of Godhead, and Bhattacharya tried to establish him as one of the great devotees. Both of them argued from the angle of vision of authentic Shastras and not on the strength of sentimental vox populi. The incarnation of the God are determined by authentic Shastras, not by popular votes of foolish fanatics. Because Lord Chaitanya was an incarnation of God in fact, foolish fanatics have proclaimed so many so called incarnations of God in this age without referring to authentic scriptures. But Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya or Gopinath Acharya did not indulge in such foolish sentimentalism. On the contrary, both of them tried to establish or reject his divinity on the strength of authentic Shastras. Later, it was disclosed the Bhattacharya also came from Navdeep area, and it was understood from him that Nilambara Chakrabarti, the maternal grandfather of Lord Chaitanya, happened to be class fellow of father of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. In that sense, young sannyasi Lord Chaitanya evoked a paternal affection from the Bhattacharya. Bhattacharya was the professor of many sannyasis in the order of Shankaracharya Sampradaya, and he himself also belonged to that cult. Such such, Bhattacharya desired that young sannyasi Lord Chaitanya also hear from him about the teachings of Vedanta. Those who are followers of Sankara cult are generally known as Vedantists. This does not, however, mean that Vedanta is a monopoly study of Sankara Sampradaya. Vedanta is studied by all bona fide Sampradayas, but they have their own interpretation. But those in a Sankara Sampradaya are generally known to be ignorant of the knowledge of Vedantist Vaishnavas. For this reason, Bhaktivedanta title was first offered to the author by the Vaishnavas. The Lord agreed to take lessons from Bhattacharya on the Vedanta, and then they sat together in the temple of Lord Jagannath. Bhattacharya went on speaking continually for 7 days, and Lord heard him with all attention and did not interrupt. The Lord's silence raised some doubts in Bhattacharya's heart. He asked the Lord how it was that he did not ask anything or comment on his explanation of Vedanta. Lord posed himself before Bhattacharya as the foolish student and pretended that he heard the Vedanta from him because Bhattacharya felt that this was the duty of sannyasi. But the Lord did not agree with his lectures. By this, Lord indicated that so-called Vedantists among the Sankara Sampradaya or any other Sampradaya who do not follow the instruction of Srila Vyasadeva are mechanical students of Vedanta. They are not fully aware of the great knowledge. The explanation of Vedanta Sutra is given by the author himself in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. One who has no knowledge of Bhagavata will hardly be able to know what the Vedanta says. The Bhattacharya, being vastly learned man, could follow the Lord's sarcastic remarks on the popular Vedantist. He therefore asked him why he did not ask about any point which he could not follow. The Bhattacharya could understand the purpose of his dead silence for the days he had heard him. This showed clearly that the Lord had something else in mind. Thus, Bhattacharya requested him to disclose his mind. Upon this, the Lord spoke as follows: My dear sir, I can understand the meaning of the sutras like Janmadiyasya Yataha, Shastra Yonitvat, Athato Brahma Jigyasa of Vedanta Sutra. But when you explain them in your own way, it becomes difficult for me to follow them. The purpose of the Shastras is already explained in them, but your explanations are covering them with something else. You do not purposely take the direct meaning of the sutras, but indirectly give your own interpretation. The Lord thus attacked all Vedantists who interpret Vedanta Sutra fashionably, according to their limited power of thinking, to serve their own purpose. Such indirect interpretations of the authentic literature, like Vedanta Sutra, are hereby condemned by the Lord. The Lord continued, Srila Vyasadeva has summarized the direct meaning of the mantras in Upanishads in Vedanta Sutras. Unfortunately, you do not take their direct meaning. You indirectly interpret them in a different way. The authority of the Vedas is unchallenging. The authority of the Veda is unchallengeable and stands without any question of doubt. And whatever is stated in the Vedas must be accepted completely. Otherwise, one challenges the authority of the Vedas. The conch shell and the cow dung are the bone and stool of two living beings. But because they have been recommended by the Vedas as pure, people accept them as such because of the authority of the Vedas. The idea is that one cannot set his imperfect reason about the authority of the Vedas. The order of the Vedas must be obeyed as they stand without any mundane reasoning. The so called followers of the Vedic injunctions made their own interpretation of Vedic injunctions, and thus they established different parties and sects of the Vedic religion. Lord Buddha directly denied the authority over the Vedas, and he established his own religion. Only for this reason, the Buddhist religion was not accepted by the strict followers of the Vedas. But those who are so called followers of Vedas are more harmful than the Buddhists. The Buddhists have the courage to deny the Vedas directly, but the so called followers of the Vedas have no courage to deny the Vedas, although indirectly they disobey all the injunctions of the Vedas. Lord Chaitanya condemned this. The examples given by the Lord of the conch shell and the cow dung was very much appropriate in this connection. If one argues that since cow dung is pure, the stool of a learned Brahmana is still more pure, his argument will not be accepted. The cow dung is accepted and stool of a highly posted Brahmana is rejected. The Lord continued, the Vedic injunctions are self authorized, and if some mundane creature adjusts the interpretation of the Vedas, he defies their authority. It is foolish to think of oneself as more intelligent than Srila Vyasadeva. He has already expressed himself in his sutras, and there is no need of help from personalities of lesser importance. His work, the Vedanta Sutra, is as dazzling as the midday sun. And when someone tries to give his own interpretation on the self-effulgent sun like Vedanta Sutra, he attempts to cover this sun with the cloud of his this imagining with the cloud of his imagination. Vedas and Puranas are one and the same in purpose. They ascertain the absolute truth, which is greater than anything else. The absolute truth is ultimately realized as the absolute personality of Godhead with absolute controlling power. As such, the absolute personality of Godhead must be completely full of opulence, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. Yet the transcendental personality of Godhead is astonishingly ascertained as impersonal. So, dear devotees, in the interest of time, we'll stop here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So now we'll read Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Saswarup Das Goswami Maharaj ki jai. So we have been reading the sixth volume of Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, and we are at the chapter Preaching to America, Part 1. So there was a conversation between Prabhupada and reporter. Prabhupada, we are the best social workers. Peoples are fools and rascals, and we are teaching them nice idea of God consciousness. We are the best social workers. We will stop all crimes. What is your social work? Producing hippies and criminals? That is not social work. Social work means the population must be very peaceful, wise, intelligent, and God conscious. The first class man. That is social work. If you produce some fourth class, fifth class, 10th class of men, what is social work? We are not producing that. Just see, here is first class men. They do not have any bad habit: illicit sex, intoxication, meat eating, and gambling. They are all young men. They are not addicted to all these things. This is social work. When a reporter asked about the political effects of the Hare Krishna movement, Prabhupada said, if this God consciousness is spread, then everyone will be brilliantly qualified. Recalling a discussion from his morning walk on the campus of University of California, Berkeley, he added, the students are studying psychology, but the result is that they are falling down from the tower in a disappointment, and they are protected with glass. Bahulswa explained further what Prabhupada meant. In the bell tower on the Berkeley campus, students in 60s would jump from that tower to kill themselves. So they put glass there to stop the students from jumping. So Prabhupada was explaining that this is their education, that after getting their education, they have to commit suicide. Brahmananda. Srila Prabhupada, one press man wanted to know what is this Rath Yatra festival? Why is it going on over here in Western worlds? Prabhupada, if God is the proprietor of everything, he is also proprietor of the Western world. Is there any dispute? If you say God is the proprietor of Western world, what is wrong there? So if the Western world has forgotten God, and he comes to remind them what is wrong. Reporter, but what is the purpose of the large cards and other things you use? Prabhupada, large cards means God is very great. He requires very great card. The devotees laugh. Why should he go in a small car? Prabhupada continued speaking until all questions were answered. Now, whatever the reporters would write was up to them, but Prabhupada had used the occasions for glorifying Lord Krishna and explaining his movement. Whether press conference, public festival, private conversation, or translating his purpose was the same. During a morning walk on the Berkeley campus, Prabhupada pronounced that nuclear was inevitable. Devotees has brought up the topic of proliferation of atomic weapons. Russia has so many weapons. China has so many weapons. The United States has so much. Prabhupada. Everyone now. India also. Devotee. They all are afraid of using them. Prabhupada. They must use it. That's the nature's arrangement. Chuckling. That that you all die. That is the nature's arrangement. Tamal Krishna Goswami. When someone gets some power, he wants to try it out. Just like there was that demon, Lord Shiva gave him power so that anyone's head he touched would fall off. Prabhupada, yes, just like in your country, there are so many cars, so that a poor man like me has car always, not an inch move on leg. But because there are so many cars, naturally they must be used. Similarly, there are so many weapons now that must be used. That is natural sequence. They must use it. Bahulswa. That is why they have wars, just to use up the weapons. Prabhupada, oh yes, devotee. The only difficulty is that for one person to use atomic weapon, that means it would be the entire waste of mankind. So everyone is afraid of using the ultimate. Prabhupada. Anyway, they must be used. There is no doubt about it. Therefore, we can say there will be war. There is no astrology. It is natural conclusion. Devotee. That will be total destruction. Prabhupada, well, total or partial, that we shall see, but they must be used. Devotee, under the threat of nuclear war, wouldn't Krishna conscious be more easy to spread? Prabhupada, no, threat is already there, but they are such fools that they are not afraid of the threat. Threat is already there. Everyone will die. That is the problem. But who's caring for this? They are avoiding this. They cannot take any anti measures. Yadubra. So it will take a war to bring them to their senses a bit. Prabhupada. No, war is already going on. But they are so senseless that they will not come to this. They are so rascal. Therefore, they are described as Muda, all rascals. Kamal Krishna. It is very hard to preach to these fools. Prabhupada. Prabhupada. No, chant Hare Krishna. That will be sufficient. Srila Prabhupada had rarely been so conclusive about nuclear war. Earlier in this year, on a walk in Mayapur, he had discussed how there would be a World War III, and that talk had become a sensation throughout ISKCON. But before he had always offered the alternative. If the people of the world would take to Krishna consciousness, then cumulative karma could be reversed. But now he said it was inevitable. While in Berkeley, Srila Prabhupada received a visit from Yogi Bhajan, founder of HHH Foundation, Swami Chidananda, president of the Divine Life Society, and the Jain leader Swami Sushil Muni, president of the World Fellowship of Religion. Swami Sushil wore a white turban and across his mouth a white mask in the tradition of non-violent Jains. who try to avoid killing even airborne microbes. Yogi Bhajan, dressed in typical Sikh fashion of white turban and white loose fitting garments, was accompanied by a few of his Western disciples, similarly attired. Visits from various Swamis and yogis were not uncommon for Srila Prabhupada. Even when he did not agree with a particular philosophy, he was always the cordial host, pleasantly receiving guests in his simple quarters. In Hawaii, Yogi Bhajan had also visited Srila Prabhupada to invite him to his Unity of Man conference, which many sadhus were already scheduled to attend. Srila Prabhupada had spoken sternly, pointing out that simply gathering people at a meeting was not unity. The real unity could be achieved only if the participants of the meeting agreed to accept the authorized signs of God in the revealed scripture. Now they had come to invite him to a second Unity of Man conference. The Swami Sushil and Swami Chidananda were particularly enthusiastic in praising Srila Prabhupada and his ISKCON. Your movement is something different, said Chidananda. It is all over the world, and you have so many thousands of people all over the world. We can't describe it. It's so amazing. And in this age, how wonderfully it has been done. Without God's mercy, nothing could have been done. That 6 lakhs of magazines have come out and been distributed in 1 month. It is amazing. Swami Sushil added, you have established the same principles without any change here in modern way. In Bengal, without your ashrama, we could not have done anything. When we know that there is ashrama of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we do not need to worry about anything, where to stay. What strikes me is that you do not compromise anywhere. They mentioned the horrible sin of cow's laughter, and Srila Prabhupada told how this his movement was protecting cows in New Vrindavan. When Swami Sushil asked how Prabhupada interested the young people in God, Prabhupada gave the example that the most popular sweet shop in Delhi was the one where everything was made with pure ghee. If the thing is good, Prabhupada said, then there won't be a shortage of customers. He further pointed out that his teachings were based on purely on Bhagavad Gita, surrender to Krishna. When Swami Sushil asked how Prabhupada got his followers to take shelter of Krishna, Prabhupada replied, it's God who did it. God says, Ma mekam sharanam vraja. So that is our duty, just to take shelter of him. Lord Chaitanya says, Yare dekhe dekha tare kaha Krishna upadesh. That is, whoever you meet, just preach the teachings of Krishna as in Bhagavad Gita. I do not have any Upadesha instruction. It's just Krishna's Upadesh. We are all foolish. We can't have any Upadesh. So, what are teachings of Krishna? We just keep on saying them. Krishna says, do like that, and that's what we do. So, this is our secret. I do this. That is what I teach to all these people. I'm totally against manufactured religion. Evam parampara praptam, just as Krishna says. In reply to Swami Sushil's question of how people could be brought together, Prabhupada quoted a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam that lists many races of the world and explained that all of them can be purified by taking shelter of Krishna's pure devotee. Prabhupada's guest again invited him to their conference, and Swami Sushil added, we are very glad to meet you today. We would like to call you sometime in our meeting of Yoga Dharma. We will come, said Prabhupada. What about your fellowship? It's called World Fellowship of Religion, said Swami Chidananda. Yogiji has made this Unity of Man conference, but we invited him said Yogi Bhajan, referring to the previous invitation. Swami Chidananda. But now you are having the second one, Yogi Bhajan. Yes, the second meeting is in Mexico. We will call him then as well. Srila Prabhupada smiled and said, I told you before, there is not going to be any unity. This candid remark made them laugh. You say, said Swami Chidananda, remembering Prabhupada's analysis, that until everyone is God minded, until then. When God will desire, said Yogi Bhajan, then everyone will become God minded. What's the great deal about it? God Himself says, Srila Prabhupada, Dukhalyam Ashashvatam, there is suffering. You cannot stay in this world. You have to leave. The main problem is birth, old age, disease, and death. So we are not anxious to adjust these things here, but these are the real problems. What can we do about birth, old age, disease, and death? Asked Swami Chidananda. Srila Prabhupada continued preaching Bhagavad Gita. Without overly disagreeing, Prabhupada's guest inquired and listened with respect, considering him a great spiritual leader, potent in spreading Hindu Dharma. He is great, said Yogi Bhajan. That's what I want to learn. How he can do that. The conversation turned and Prabhupada mentioned that Yogi Bhajan was from Sikh community, which is famous for its brave fighters. When British people were defeated, said Srila Prabhupada, it was by the Sikh people. I have seen it. It is due to Sikh only. The Sikhs, the Sikhs are Kshatriyas. Some of them are Brahmanas, Brahmana Kshatriyas. Swami Sushil, yes, I said to some of my students that you go to Prabhupada ji and he will make you Brahmana Kshatriyas. Prabhupada, yes, let us cooperate like that. You take the work of Kshatriyas and we take the work of Brahmanas. For Brahmanas, we need brain, and for Kshatriyas, we need strength. As they spoke about non-violence, Srila Prabhupada argued that if one does not become God conscious, then he will undoubtedly be committing himsa or violence. Yogi Bhajan. Yes, when they come to their senses, then they remember God. Prabhupada laughing. Here in the West, there is only himsa, nothing else. Prabhupada guest laughed with him. Afterward, they took some photographs and Srila Prabhupada invited them, along with some of his disciples, to sit and take Krishna Prasadam together. Srila Prabhupada requested his guest to attend the San Francisco Rath Yatra to be held next day, and they agreed. July 20, 1975. This was not only the largest ISKCON Rath Yatra ever, but also the largest gathering of devotees to date, larger even than the international gathering at Mayapur earlier this year. Preparations at the festival site had expanded to include prasadam booths, DT paraphernalia displays, souvenirs, and Prabhupada books. Thousands joined the more than 800 devotees in the procession through Golden Gate Park. Because the builders of the cart had decided to make steel wheels instead of usual wooden ones, difficulty arose. Srila Prabhupada had warned them, this is your American disease, always changing. Do not change the old design. But they had already done it. Riding in Subhadra's cart, which has wooden wheels, Srila Prabhupada experienced no personal inconvenience. The other two carts, however, did not fare so well. They began to vibrate so severely that supports beam had to be added to the spokes during the procession. Soon the wheels became misshapen and they creaked and rattled as though about to collapse. But somehow, after much difficulty, all three carts completed the course. In the midst of Rath Yatra activities, one of the devotees asked Srila Prabhupada if he had ever attended the Rath Yatra festival in Jagannath Puri. No, Prabhupada replied. I was having my own Rath Yatra. So this chapter is finished. Tomorrow we'll start Reaching to America Part 2. So we'll stop here. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. His Holiness Satsvarup Das Goswami Maharaj ki jai. So anybody has any question, correction, chastisement, any realization before we continue chanting? Okay. So if there's no question, Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Bhevcha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnaveभ्यो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय।